Hey guys, it's Greg Alexander. You know, everybody today has topwater frogs for bass fishing. Uh, I don't know if anybody doesn't love to catch a fish on topwater. But you know, all frogs are not created equal, and some frogs work differently in different situations. So I just want to go over the intricacies of frog fishing for you today so you understand. So stay tuned because you will pick up on some things that you didn't understand that maybe you're missing out on, and the guy over there is catching them on a frog and you got the same color tied on and you can't get bit and you don't know why. So let's talk about the differences in these frogs and when to use them, in what situations, how to rig them, and all those things. So stay tuned here. So frogs come in several different shapes and sizes. You have popping frogs that have a little popping lip on them, you know, for popping long. You have regular pointy nose or slop frogs, I would call them. They don't have that popping deal in them. And then you have the sinking type frogs that you got to keep moving, like this toad bait or this other type of toad bait. And then you have the hybrid frogs, which are a combination of floating frog and toad frog, and like this top toad here, for example, which it has the little legs that work, but it also will float and you can stop it, which is very important sometimes. So when do you throw frogs? I start throwing a frog about the time the water gets about 65 degrees or so. Now, there'll be a period of time when they're done, you know, when they're immediately done spawning, that they'll hit a frog pretty good. And then there'll be a short period of time where they won't touch it. And then once the water warms up, the fry have moved on, the fish have set up on a shallow cover again, then they'll start eating a frog again. So you can catch them on a frog, you know, anytime, pretty much anytime the water is mid 60s on up. And a lot of times what people don't realize, you know, everybody's out fishing these deep ledges and stuff on a lot of these lakes. There's a population of fish that will live all year long in water that deep, because that shallow water in the heat of summer contains a lot of oxygen compared to some of the deeper areas, many times if there's no, you know, if there's no current flow. So when would you throw which frog? Well, when the fish are extremely aggressive, cloudy days, a little bit of wind, then I'm probably going to throw a toad style bait, you know, with little flappy legs, or when it makes a little bit more commotion, bigger flappy style legs on it, when the fish are extremely aggressive. Or when you just want to cover a lot of water, you know, to try to find, you're fishing a great big lily pad field and you don't know where the fish are in the lily pad field, and you don't pop along with a little popping frog. You don't know where they're at. So you pick up these toad style baits and find where those fish are. And you may not even catch them on these baits, but they'll swirl at it and kind of let you know what's going on. So it's more of a search type bait. But there's days where they won't touch a toad. It's moving too fast for them. They're not interested in it at all. And that's when you need to slow down. So then you would throw more of a floating type frog. Now, this floating type frog here with the pointy nose is going to be better for lily pads, slop, skipping even, than the popping frog. The popping frog is going to be better for you throwing in open holes in the lily pads or around submerged grass with holes in it where you want to pop it and let it sit. It makes a little bit more noise, can attract a bass's attention that's sitting under the lily pads over here or sitting in this little grass pot over here, and they can't see the bait, but then they hear it. So then the popping frog is going to work better. Now, one thing a lot of people don't realize about a frog is the length of the skirt and the shape of the belly the shape of the belly matter a lot to how this frog acts. If you have a long, heavy skirted tail on there, then that's going to inhibit the frog's ability to sashay back and forth. It gives it a little bit more appeal maybe sometimes, but it takes some of that sashay out of it because these basically just act like dampers, right? They stop the frog from turning along. You know, imagine if you put a 10-foot long trailer on there. You wouldn't be able to get the thing to sashay at all. It wouldn't do it at all. So sometimes if you're looking for a walk the dog type retreat with a frog, retrieve with a frog, then you need to trim these legs back, kind of like I have on this one. See, I have had the legs trimmed way back on this one compared to this one, right? And I do that because that allows this bait to walk a lot better. So something else that allows a bait to walk better. See, some of these baits, some of these frogs, the belly part is flat. It's just flat. So that thing just kind of ice skates around wherever you want it to go. But what happens when you pull on it and it's flat is it doesn't follow a track or a trail. So if you want to walk the dog with a frog, in other words, get it to go back and forth, it starts with a cadence with your wrist. But if you don't have the right type of frog, you're going to get frustrated. If you have too long of a tail on her, you're going to get frustrated. If it doesn't have that keeled belly, what I call a keeled belly, you'll get frustrated. So I don't know if you can see it or not, but on this frog, the belly is pointy. I call that a keeled belly frog. Now that frog, when you jerk it, see, it's going to follow that keel until it stops, and we jerk it back the other way, it's going to follow that keel again, and you'll get a much better walking action out of this frog. And so I would throw, you know, a floating frog when I'm trying to elicit a strike from a fish who's not as aggressive. Say maybe I'll throw that frog in a blow down tree or something, skip it up in there. And if I had thrown the toad in there and reeled it out, he's 6 or 7 branches down in the tree, and he's just not going to come and get it because it's moving too fast for him. So that's when you would throw a floating frog in a situation like that, where he's sitting on a certain little spot and you want to put it on top of him and you want him to get irritated because it's still there. And that's what a floating frog will do for you. So I throw floating frog when I'm targeting short, overhanging, shaded areas where I need it to be there for a little bit of time to give the fish time to react to it. And you know, then there's these middle of the road type frogs like the top toad, for example. Here's a top toad, Stanley ribbit top toad, which is a hollow belly floating frog, which you add a hook to. And you can do both with this. So you can reel it along and it gurgles along real nice when you're reeling it. But then you can stop it if you need to stop it over a hole or something to get that fish to bite. Or you can reel it extremely slow, or you can reel it fast. So you can adjust a frog like this to the mood of the fish. So how do you rig the toads? I mean, the frogs, the hollow belly frogs, come pre-rigged. And sometimes what you may want to do with them is you may want to just take the hooks and bend them open just a hair to give that fish a little bit more something to get a hold of. I like to take these frogs when I get them and I kind of just grab them with my hand like this. And I just kind of feel. And this one, man, I don't feel any hook at all with this one. So with this one, before I would throw this one, I'm definitely bending those hooks open just a hair. But with these toad type baits, You can use a single or a double hook here. This is a double hook. It has a little keeper on the end of it. See a little spring keeper on the end of it. And you just run that spring keeper down into the head of the bait. Get it started here. And till it's almost to the hook head. Get it faced in the right direction, and then this is what you end up with. And then you just take that hook and put it on the other side. Sit on the other side of that, and then you just back it up and skin hook it. And sometimes if the fish are biting kind of funky, I'll just skin hook one of the hooks and leave the other hook open, like so. I'll leave one of the hooks open, and that gives you a little bit better hookup percentage on it. And a good thing about a frog, man, these half-ounce ones, they got a little weight in the back. The ones that don't have the popping end on them, man, you can skip these things a long ways. Bait casting gear, spinning gear, whatever. You can skip these things a long ways, back up in little dark holes and up under docks and things where you have a hard time skipping a lighter bait. And you can also skip these toads a long way too. So that's how to rig a toad. That's the difference in the different frogs and toads, when you should use them. Colors. My general rule of thumb with any lure is dark days, dark lures, light days, light lures. Now the only time that changes is with like topwater baits. It seems to me a lot of times in a topwater bait situation with a frog that black works better on a clear day and white works better on a dark day. So that would be the only exception to that rule that I generally use with all lures. But that's not set in stone, right? Because every day is different. Fish get different moods. Some days when they're supposed to do this, they don't do that. So you always got to remain open-minded, even with frogs. And don't get in the trap that, man, I caught my fish on this sexy shad color popping frog, and you go out the next couple times and they won't bite it. And you think, well, they're just not biting a frog today. No, they're not biting that frog. They may be biting this one, or they may be biting this one. So with every lure that we use, you can have a favorite lure that's great, but you gotta be able to every day say, today's not the day for that. I'm gonna try something else, and go through your progressions. So that's a general, in a nutshell, recap of frogs, toads, floating frogs, sinking frogs, when you would throw them, what colors to throw, how to rig them up again, and I hope it helps you catch more fish. Have a blessed day.